Hello, all you cyberheads.
The House will be in order.
Holmes has pleaded not guilty to racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation.
Try not to, and I don't think I am, but if I seem to cut somebody short.
Defending. Oh, what a move by Brunson. Abracadabra on that one.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Urban Heat R&B Talk.
Yes, it's your girl, the most
We're
powerful
back.
from LEB, Goose. It's a little drizzling and raining outside. I don't know how I'm feeling about all this.
Well, you gotta fertilize the flowers, I guess. I don't know.
I suppose.
But good morning and welcome to another edition of R&B Talk, y'all. Now, today we were supposed to talk about finances and how to get that estate together and things like that. But our special guest, you know how it is with attorneys, things come up. You got to go to court. And so she's not going to be with us today, but we're going to reschedule that, and we're definitely going to get that in because finances is important, how to set up your estate and, wealth building. That's very, very important.
Absolutely.
So we'll have her back probably I'm trying to get her in next Thursday if I can.
Okay.
And we also have a private event that's happening here at the station next Saturday. So if you have family and friends you want to invite, it's all about wealth building.
Wait, how's it a private event if you just publicly announced it?
Well, I'm sure we got some friends and family that's listening. So if you know anybody up here, reach out to Mel. You can reach out to me. Hey, Steve, can I come to that event? I'll hook you up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not even mad at you for that.
So I'm inviting people to a private event.
Yes.
Now you do have to register for it and all that. So reach out to your peoples if you know somebody up here. It's all about wealth building. We're going to talk about crypto. We're going to talk about life insurance.
Yes.
Because Cash App is not Cash App. What is it?
GoFundMe pages.
GoFundMe is not life insurance.
Isn't that wild?
Right? And I understand when things happen, you have to do what you got to do, but it is not life insurance. So, and there's ways you can use life insurance. That is a part of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have that discussion. And Nicole, attorney Nicole, we're going to get her back in. I'm going to see if she can get in here on Thursday or Wednesday or Tuesday. We'll see what happens. We'll let you know as soon as possible.
I love it.
In the meantime, there's a lot going on.
There is.
Diddy, Karen Reed, Tory Lanez, and always cryptocurrency. So let's get into it.
And
what you want to start off with?
And the Celtics.
Oh, of course, that's right. Matter of fact, let's start right there. Let's start with our Boston Celtics. So, Tatum goes down. He tears his Achilles, right. As you saw on, was it Monday? Yeah, Monday he did that.
And he's going to be out for next season as well.
And he's going to be out all of next year.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, they did win last night. I know a lot of people didn't expect them to win that game, but they're still alive. And I don't care what anybody says, right? The Knicks didn't do anything special to beat us. They did nothing special. We pretty much beat ourselves in all three losses against the Knicks. We did things out of character. That's not Boston Celtic basketball. So, they play again on Friday in New York. And the one thing I'm going to tell you now, they're going to have to do, if they're going to win on Friday, they're going to have to take New York's heart out of the game. They're going to have to take the fans out of the game because that crowd's going to be roaring on Friday.
I said this off air and I'm going to say it again. I don't understand why New York fans have to be so crude. Every time I see any clip of a New York fan talking about a win, they refer to their private area and how you need to perform actions on it. Like why. What is that?
New York's not used to winning.
What you mean, New York? Yeah, well,
they're not used to winning.
Except that one time when the Jets got the Jets kind of jetted, right? So
how long ago was that?
Okay, that was like
decades ago.
Perry time.
That was decades ago.
But then
when the Giants won, how long ago was that?
That's Brady time.
that was Brady decades ago, right?
Yeah.
So they're not used to winning, and the Knicks have always sucked. I'm gonna say they've always sucked.
Not they always.
They've always.
You're
sucked.
saying that with your chest.
I'm saying it with my chest.
Oh, snap.
You know,
all right.
and like I
all
said,
right.
they've done nothing special to beat us in those games. We pretty much be. If you go back and look at how we played during the season, and versus now, we beat ourselves.
No, for sure. I'll be honest with you. It doesn't make sense how close the numbers have been running. You know what I'm saying? We're talking 1 point off. We're talking literally it was this, it was that. There are things that just don't make sense.
The intangibles.
Yes. And then you got to sit there and ask yourself, is it part of a script? This goes back to that whole debate and conversation that has been plagued in the NBA, the NFL. Do they script out these events so that they generate the money?
It's funny you say that, right? Because I'm pulled in and then I'm pulled back out. So one of
my friends said the same thing. She said, "I ain't watching, my heart getting broken. I'm done."
Right. They pull me in, then they pull me back out. It's fixed. It's fixed. It's fixed. And then all of a sudden I'm pulled back in. Yeah.
Because you love it. It's like when it used to be the WWF. You didn't know Jimmy Fly Snooker was really doing it or not. I mean, this is
I remember
debate.
that back in the day, man. I used to think wrestling was real,
Right? It's the ongoing debate. I love my city. I love all of our teams. We are a city of champions. I know people getting their feelings,
right?
Especially when you talk to people from New York. The first thing they're gonna tell you is, "Oh, but the Yankees, we got all these titles, bro." Let's not even go there.
Yeah, when was the last time the Yankees won?
Listen, again, bro, we're not gonna go there. So all I'm gonna say is that Brown is gonna really have to hold down the team. And it's gonna, I just feel like he's gonna have to step up.
I'm gonna go back to what I said before,
which is
injuries.
Yeah,
and you know what I said before? I wasn't making that an excuse. Yes, I am. That is an excuse. Injuries, because last year they said the Celtics won because of the opposing team's injury. So why can't we use that now? Look at Porzingis. What's going on with him? He's giving us 0 on the field. Yeah. Porzingis is giving us 0 on the court. I said field.
But I know what you meant.
Right.
I know what you meant.
Hello, Urban Heat. Who's this?
Hey, Steve, brother, what's up, man? It's Rich Sports, brother. How you doing?
Hey, what's happening, Rich? You always on time, man. We talking about the Celtics, man. Perfect timing. I was just talking and just saying that Porzingis is giving us nothing on the court, man. And, I'm using injuries as an excuse. And I think it's a good excuse. Why not? We're not getting what we got from him during the season. What do you think, man?
Well, Steve, they're not putting it out there, but I saw something last night on a blog. He had breathing problems, and Steve, they're not putting it out there, but the brother's actually suffering from, I think, the effects of long COVID. He had some breathing problems last night.
Really?
And I'm really going to give him a pass, Steve. He's out there fighting, and he's trying to be a warrior.
Wow.
Because that's what he did last year when he was injured, when he won game 1 against Dallas for us. But the brother's trying, Steve. But that long COVID effect, if you don't know anyone who suffers from it, which I do personally, Steve, it drains you, your energy, your breathing comes and goes, and he's really fighting. But they just don't want to put it out there because he's fighting for it.
Wow, that's good. That's good to know. I didn't know that, man. Y'all hear that? Porzingis is suffering from long COVID, and they haven't put it out there in the media yet, but okay, that explains it because he's not the same player,
That's
Steve,
very
he had
sad.
a respiratory infection a couple of months ago, and he tried to come back from it. If you remember, they put that out there, and people was like, why is he on the bench if he has a respiratory infection? But he did have a bout with COVID, and I think he's suffering effects. But you know what, Steve?
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of the boys. They went out there last night. They didn't let the Knicks celebrate on our home court. And I'm telling you, Steve, they better not let us win Game 6 down in New York Friday night.
And you know what?
What he brought to the
I'm with you
night.
on that, man. We pull it out on Friday, man. Listen, it's going to be electric when they come back here to TD Garden, man. But you know what? You know what I liked about how they played last night? I thought they played really tough.
It was strategic.
And aggressive.
It was very aggressive and strategic.
Right.
I mean, you definitely could see the control of the ball was happening.
Yeah.
And you could see how there was methodical movement happening. There wasn't this kind of rigmarole of this is what our drill is and we're going to run it. They're literally they were playing chess last night.
Yeah,
for sure. And I think anybody who was part of that vision of watching what was happening could witness and see it real time happening in front of you. I mean, that's my opinion. So,
Well, no, you're very accurate on that. And you know what? I kind of hate to say this. I love Jason Tatum, but Jason Tatum, LeBron James, Luka, those guys are ball stoppers. They slow down offenses. Everybody stands around and end up taking an open three. If you watch the history since Jason Tatum's missed games, Steve, they're like 19-5. You get better movement. The ball doesn't stop. It's kind of makes me feel bad to say that, but the ball moves more, Steve.
I hear you, and I heard someone else say that as well. But you know what? I'm gonna stand up for Jason because, man, when it's good, it's good, and when he's popping, it's still good. If you know what I mean.
You're exactly right about that.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, they play New York on Friday, man. Again, I think that crowd, they got to take the crowd out of the game first. That's the first thing they have to do, man. Because
what are you gonna stop them at the door? Like,
you have to do something.
Excuse me, sir, you cannot enter.
That's a good idea. That's a real good idea. You know, take the crowd out of it, man.
Hey, listen, Steve. One more thing, man. I'm watching First Take right now. Stephen A. Smith don't feel good about Game 6 if the Knicks lose, man.
Hey. You know what? I think if we can pull it out, man, it'll be one of the biggest things that happen in a while, man. You know, to do it out without Jason
Tatum. We pull
Tatum.
out Game 6. The Knicks are not. They're not going to want to get on that airplane and come back to Boston for Game 7. Steve.
Right. And that was definitely a different Celtics team last night, man.
Yep. All right, Steve, man. Hey, man, it's always
thanks, Rich.
You, man.
It's always a pleasure,
Rich.
man.
Take care. Have a great day.
We'll do it again.
Yep.
Yeah, that's Rich Gilmore with Rich Sports. And you heard it first. He said it, that Porzingis has long COVID and he has a breathing problem, which is why we haven't been seeing him play his usual game on the court, man. So,
which is really unfortunate. I mean,
yeah,
you know, people, man, Goose, I say this all the time and I'm going to say it again. I don't think that people we're not going to know the truth. I think the reports are going to always be redacted, and we're not going to see the redaction from the reports until 100 years from now. Right? You and I are going to be long gone. Our grandchildren probably, where we're going to find out all of the truths of what we've actually lived through and what people are dealing with on a daily basis. How, the jab impacted people's health, how it impacted their mental, how it impacted their biomolecular cellular levels of things. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I'm telling you right now, this is just the beginning of that. And the fact that we're still seeing, and we're like, what now, 5 years out?
Yeah.
Well, 5 years out, and people are still struggling heavy duty.
And you're right. And people have been dropping like flies too. So since then, the amount of people that have passed in their 40s and early 50s, just young men and women, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a lot going on out there, but we won't talk about the food again.
We're not going to food.
We're going to skip that.
We're not going to go to the food. Not the food, Goose. Not the food.
So, let's talk about Tory Lanez real quick.
Okay.
As you know, he was stabbed 14 times just a few days ago.
Yes.
Nearly lost his life. And the person that did it, life in prison. He's a lifer. And speculation and rumors since then has been floating around that it was a hit. Some people are pointing towards Rock Nation.
Really?
Yeah. And
but I mean, is it far-fetched? Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely
and
not.
This all started days after evidence had come out that was going to clear Tory, that his DNA was not on the gun. That he never touched the gun, he never shot her. And so that's a crazy story. And with that being said, the music business, I'm telling you right now, straight up, it's not what everybody think it is.
Oh, absolutely.
The
smoke and mirrors are a real thing.
The music business is a business where people in power, they have a lot of power.
Yeah.
A lot of power. We're not talking about the boss at CBS or someone. I mean, these people, you're talking about folks that are running conglomerates.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
But I think Quincy Jones was a part of all that.
Yeah.
I think, I allegedly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say allegedly, I've heard stories about, when Will Smith was a young kid and he happened to be at a party in Hollywood, and the people that were at NBC were there, and Quincy Jones pulls them into the room and says, "You audition now. Go out there, go be Fresh Prince," right? And you hear about all these stories about how celebrities have, done things or had to do things to get into rooms or to get roles or whatever it might be. And then you also had celebrities who were whistleblowers,
Right.
like Corey Haim. He's a good example of that, right?
Mhm.
And they tried everything in their power to destroy him in the media, destroy him in social settings, to ensure that his truth did not make it out there. And I think there's something to be said about how we as a culture are embracing this kind of don't say, don't ask, don't tell. And then on another flip side to that, we're also embracing a culture of Me Too,
Yeah.
right? And let me just say this much, and I'm a move back. I was in a space in a room where I was blessed enough to be invited, where women normally are not invited into this space.
Right.
And this is a space of gentlemen that have been incarcerated. I was in a room of about, I would say, a good 20 plus men. All had been incarcerated at one point or another. Some have done 20 plus years, 28 years. Some have only been out for a few years. Some have been out for 20 plus years. But I was very honored because women normally are not allowed in this sacred space. And the reason I got invited in was because the conversation was surrounding a movie that had been shown to them about domestic violence and what that situation looks like. And so one of the conversation pieces that was happening in this room, first I was in awe, right? Because these cats, I was like, dang, you did 28 years locked upstate. Like, that's not some easy bit, right? That was the first thing. The second thing was I was amazed at how open these guys were about what the experience is, what the struggle's been for them, re-entering society, what that looked like. And now, why am I saying this? Because now we have going on in the trial with Diddy, people talking about how Cassie had a prostitute urinate in her mouth. And people are saying, oh, it's a cash money grab because why did she stay?
Right.
People do not understand that when you are in a DV, a domestic violence situation, a lot of times the emotional space where you are attached to that person through trauma bonding is what causes you to keep re-entering and staying, right? So you might have to leave 2 and 3 and 4 times before you finally make that cut, right? So people are like, oh, why did Cassie not come after him criminally but came after him civilly? Well, think about what his track record's been. If you know this capable of it, are you really going to allow for it to transpire and happen in front of you?
Right. And we're going to transition into the Diddy thing real quick.
I mean, but I'm being honest. I'm asking a question that I would love to have somebody call in and give their perspective on, because so many of us get caught up in spaces where we'll be in relationships ourselves and we allow somebody who is not a healthy person continue to inflict trauma on us, and we stay because we feel we have something to prove, whether it's our loyalty, whether it's our love, whatever that might look like. And this is a great example on a very grandiose, type of platform where you have somebody who literally had more money than God. I mean, let's keep it a buck. Had more money than God. The way these parties were going, the way he was, somebody was saying they were cleaning Airbnbs for Diddy's parties. Right?
So real quick, just to finish up on Tory Lanez, right?
Yep.
So what's happening now is they're trying to set it up so that he does not have to go back to jail with all the evidence. And again, prior to him being stabbed 14 times, information had come out that his DNA was not on the gun, and he was not involved. And you're gonna see a lot of things that come out between now and then about Rock Nation. You're gonna hear all kinds of rumors, and again, I just think that the business, when I say it's not what it appears to be from where we sit, we hear the music, we hear the artists, we watch them perform on stage,
sure,
and we fall in love with them, and we fall in love with their music,
right?
But behind closed doors,
we don't know what it is.
You're dealing on the business side, and you're talking millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And if you just go back and you look at some of the the Lifetime stories, you hear it all the time. From En Vogue to Whitney Houston, your Marvin Gaye's, all these artists that have passed in the past, there's a story.
Yeah, of course.
There's a story, and they're all similar.
Yeah.
You know, so I just wanted to put that out there that, you know.
But even if you're looking at it on that level, right, Goose? Like, let's stop there for a second and let's talk about it. So if we're talking about the industry in the 80s, the 90s, even the early 2000s, right? You still were mesmerized by the glitz and the glamour of the industry, right? What do you see? You see somebody who's jet setting. You see somebody who's at all the parties. You see somebody who is on a stage and in so many ways is being idolized, right? You see all this playing out.
Mm-hmm.
And so social media really did not really start making its movement until, you know, mid 2000s. Did it really start kind of growing into what we know it to be today? So prior to that, you got whatever was produced by the label. The label produced the image. The label made sure you received what it was they wanted you to receive.
And let's go all the way back to Michael Jackson. You
Right.
know, even with his death, there's speculation about how he died.
Prince.
And what really happened. The same thing with Prince.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, and, you know, you got to understand too, there's also, you can best believe there are large insurance policies on all of these artists.
Oh,
you can bet your bottom
absolutely.
dollar on that.
Isn't it something like Mariah Carey's legs are insured for something like $5 million?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Some wild number like that. Don't quote me on the actual number, but I know her legs are insured because she's notoriously known to wear those, bodysuits, right? And her legs are always out.
Yep.
So if her leg was to get damaged in some way, it would impact how we perceive her, and we're known to receive her, right? So, I don't see any of this stopping. I do feel like, like when you watch The Wizard of Oz and you go through the journey, right? And
wonderful wizard.
right? You get on the Golden Gate, right? And all that, bring you on that path. And then they get to the end and they get to the Great Oz and the curtain is pulled back. And there's this short little guy on this milk carton making all this loud booming noise. This is what's happening to the industry. It literally is dissolving right in front of us. And also what does that is because now artists don't even need the industry anymore because they can put it on all streaming platforms without the gatekeeping of the industry being involved. So now that we don't even need that portion, what are you really bringing to the table?
Well,
you get what I'm saying?
It's funny you bring that up because at the same time, they don't need the record labels. Now they're being robbed in a secondary way through streaming because they're not getting the money that they should be getting from streaming. They were actually getting more money when vinyl was out.
Really?
In CDs, they were getting more money that way. Now you get millions and millions of streams, and a lot of these artists are getting pennies on the streams, and they're not making a lot of money. But the streaming companies and, of course, the record labels getting paid. So somehow, some way, they jumped ahead of the game. They saw the technology, and they jumped on it, and they made moves. And we're not going to transition to this yet.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with this cryptocurrency stuff that's happening with that technology that's blowing up now. And I'll say this, and we're going to talk about it later. Or maybe,
I get excited.
Or maybe we should talk about it now. Maybe we should. Let's talk about it now. Because
crypto's that's my sweet spot.
Well, you know what? Let's get into it because Trump said it last week. If you're watching everything that's going on, his trip to Saudi Arabia.
They gave him a golf course and
a private jet.
Dude, that's not a jet. It is a whole Boeing 7.
Call it what you want. Call it what you want. The guy's giving you the chess move. He's telling you what's getting ready to happen, and he's telling you what he's doing.
Absolutely.
But so many folks dislike him, and I understand that too. But you know what? When
he's
it comes
telling
down,
you where to bet.
You're right. When it comes down to business, you don't have to like a person to get business done.
Listen, here's what people. Okay, look, right. This is not about a bash session either way. You know this. I don't lean my politics out of the direction. You know this, right? There's certain things I like about why he's in power. There's a lot of things that are going on that are just wild to me. This 2025, program plan is wild to me. But that's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
What I'm talking about, he is the first president ever in the seating office for America that has ever been received in Saudi Arabia with a purple carpet, because in their culture, that color symbolizes royalty and it also symbolizes trust, right? That's the first thing.
They're welcoming him with open arms.
Open arms.
Period.
Second, he's the first president ever to salute one of their generals, which again is wild. That's wild business. Thirdly, he is also the first to ever receive the type of grand gifts that were bestowed upon him
than any president.
Yeah. Here's my thing. Technically, when you are a president or a mayor or a governor and gifts are bestowed upon you, it's really technically the people's gift. It's not yours per se. Does that make sense what I'm saying to you? So even though you hold the role in the title, you yourself as the receiver or recipient of the said gift, the gift belongs to the people. Right? But now people are like, you're not planning on keeping this plane, are you?
Right.
You're not planning on keeping this golf course, are you?
Right.
Like, is there, and so it's going to be interesting to see how Trump navigates these waters as he's going into different political spaces, because now pay attention to the writing that's on the wall. The writing on the wall is now that we've gone into Saudi Arabia. Remember, back about 2.5, 3 years ago, we started talking about BRICS. And we have not spoken about BRICS for a while.
Before we get into that, let me just run this one.
You better go out and buy stock now. Let me tell you, this country will be like a rocket ship that goes straight up. This is going to be numbers that nobody's ever seen before. That's a very important element of all of it.
You heard him.
So
you heard him, and that was he said a lot more than that, but
right. But so here we are. I mean, listen, I'm kind of excited for this. I'm not gonna lie, and the reason why, I might get some hate mail, and I might end up in the principal's office for what I'm about to say, but I'm gonna say it because I know people are thinking it. Sometimes you need agitators to come into a space to change things enough so that the change can be great enough so we can actually evolve. We are not going to evolve, not as a people, as a country, and all these things. Is it okay that 8,000 Afrikaners are coming into our country claiming asylum because of racism? Like, it's wild, right? But understand what is really happening in front of us.
Right.
When we talked about, and the reason why I'm going to bring it back to BRICS is this reason. For those that don't know, BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and who? Africa. This is important. This is important because these are players that are going to be on the field that if we do not know who we're dealing with, we won't be able to move accordingly.
Right.
And this is a conversation that people don't want to have. But the reality of the conversation is, if we're not understanding what is politically happening in the climate, because if you pay attention to how things are happening, we're now being received in the Middle East, which has not happened for decades.
Right. And understand that, now I guess it's a tech meeting, or you can call it what you want.
G20.
Now, what does that have to do with some of the technology that's about to happen? It has a whole lot to do
everything to do with
AI, and it has a whole lot to do with what?
Cryptocurrency.
So
absolutely.
When you hear me say, and I say it all the time, it's going to be the greatest transferring of wealth in history. It really is.
Say one more time, Goose.
It's going to be the greatest transferring of wealth in history. And the reason why it is because trillions and trillions of dollars is coming to a market that has never, ever happened before. And it's only going to happen one time.
Yes.
It's not ever going to happen again in your lifetime. We'll all be gone when it happens again.
Because the new technology at least is 30 to 40 years out. Easy.
Yeah. And so with AI, there are AI cryptocurrencies.
Yes.
That you can buy that are very cheap. And from $1 to 50 cents or whatever, that you can buy that are gonna really take off probably in the next, I would say, 90 to 120 days.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many things that are happening real time in front of us that I wish people would probably pay a little more attention to that. But this is also why you need to have the sensationalization of things like Diddy. And you got to have people responding to Karen Reed. And it's funny. I saw a TikTok the other day. Somebody said, when I first meet somebody, the first question I'm going to ask you is, what do you think about Karen Reed's trial? And I'm going to decide if I want to deal with you or not. And I was like, well, I can kind of understand how that is.
That's kind of me. I dare someone to come up to me like that and talk, because I got a whole lot to say about that trial. We're going to get into that. We'll get that
in a little while.
Definitely going to get into that.
But, you know, again, I come back to and I say to people, when I was in the room, you know, on Tuesday with these gentlemen, I said to them, hey, look, you know, I teach crypto. I teach classes on this, on how to get into it, what it looks like, how to move in, how to get cold storage wallets, what these things mean. Don't get overwhelmed by these words and the technology. It's doable.
Because that's the biggest problem.
But
a lot
that's
of people
what they do. They
get intimidated by the vocabulary.
Of course.
Blockchain, market cap.
Yeah.
All of that stuff
Burn rates.
It's so simple. It's like basic. It's really basic understanding in terms of what a lot of the vocabulary is.
Especially when you break it down in ways that's relatable to people for them to understand what it is.
Exactly. And I'm telling you, if you've ever come to any of the workshops, you know, we go over the basics.
Mm-hmm.
We talk your language.
Yeah.
You know, we speak your language so that you can understand
it. And the thing is, you know, I love how people keep saying the same thing. I love the rhetoric. The rhetoric is they're not going to let everybody become millionaires.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that a lot of people are too emotional to become millionaires in the first place, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, the minute you start seeing the market doing something that is even a little volatile, people pull out, right? They get all, oh my God, my money, right? Let me tell you, long hold. As soon as ISO 2022 is launched, which is literally, as you said, within the next 90 days. Okay.
Well, actually, let's give these. There's some important dates. So let's talk about that.
Are you going to shoot the dates out?
Let me shoot the dates.
Okay.
So actually, this Monday is what, May 19th, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. So on the 19th will be the first XRP futures through a company called CME.
Yeah.
And so that's going to happen on Monday. So you can best believe there's going to be some growth with XRP on Monday.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you're interested, you know, in getting into it, I would definitely purchase some XRP. You won't lose on Monday. I'll be if it goes down on Monday, I'll be very shocked. Something's wrong. Something will have to be wrong for XRP not to go up on Monday. Yeah. Because it's going to be the first XRP future, the first Bitcoin
reserve out of New Hampshire.
The first Bitcoin future was 2017. And when that happened, it took Bitcoin to an all-time high, which back then was only $20,000.
I love,
but,
wait. Can we stop for a second? Who, like, just to sit there and be like, oh, 20,000.
Yeah, only $20,000.
Like, you know, like,
and I say only 20,000 because we all know it's about 103,000 today.
Oh, absolutely.
So back in 2017, $20,000, that's nothing.
And plus its first reserve was launched out of New Hampshire.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Again, there are things happening real time in front of us that if we don't stay on top of these things and know.
So that's Monday. That's May 19th.
Yeah.
July 14th. The ISO 2022 blockchain goes live,
which I'm excited about.
All right. So everything on that blockchain goes live. Meaning that all the financial institutions will have made that switch.
Yep.
And they're going to go live with the ISO 2022 blockchain. And the old SWIFT, and if everything goes according to plan, it will happen on July 14th. It was supposed to be March 14th, but they weren't ready. Every bank was not in compliance. So they pushed it to July 14th. The next important date is going to be November 22nd because it'll be live globally, you know, which is going to be huge when that happens. So, you know, XRP, I think this morning when I looked at it was $2.55.
Last I saw it was 47. But I mean, that's
what it is now.
Yeah, it fluctuates, right?
Actually, $2.41.
But again, that's still a fluctuation. We have stayed above the $2 mark, and has congruently been able to do that since November, right? Why is that important? It's important because it shows that the stability and the structure of the technology is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And people will sit here and try to confuse you and tell you why XRP could never outperform Bitcoin and so forth and so on. But what you have to always remember and I will keep and I will die on this stake, is this. XRP is a technology. It's not a currency. Why is that important? It's important to understand that, because if you understand
But
how
don't be confused by it.
No, I'm not trying to confuse somebody. This is what I'm telling you. You want to understand that you're purchasing into something. And the best way I love to explain it to people is that if we were back in the 1800s and this was now going to be the gold rush, right? Would you want to be the prospector that goes out and looks for the gold, or would you rather be the general store owner that has the picks, the shovels, and the pails that the prospectors are going to need? Well, I want to be the general store owner. Why? Because I'm guaranteed to make money, because you're going to come through my store to buy my product. Well, owning the XRP is going to be the product that's going to be used in the cross-border sales and transfer of money through the bank. Hence why it's called the banker's coin, right? So these are reasons why we as the individuals, I feel like the SEC gifted us a gift, because had the SEC not done what they did, which was basically hold XRP or Ripple up in litigation for as long as they did, it allowed for that technology to be suppressed,
right?
Which allowed for people like you and myself to get in on something that was never meant for us. Let's be honest. That's why it's called the banker's coin, because it was meant for banking institutions to own the technology, not for you and I to own it. They want us to then go to them the same way they did with the stock market, with our parents, and say, we don't think you're smart enough to know how to control your money, so give it to us.
So here's the bottom line.
But that's not true.
Right. Here's the bottom line. It's an opportunity for you to get in on something that is still on the ground.
Yep.
Just coming up. It's not too late. You did lose some money because you didn't get in years ago, or
even 3 years ago,
6 months ago, or 12 months ago. You didn't get in. So you did lose some money on it. But it's not too late, because we're talking those trillions of dollars haven't even started to pour in yet.
Exactly.
It hasn't started yet. Yeah. But it is going to happen. It's going to start probably in the next 90 days.
Oh, absolutely.
Within the next 90 days, it's going down.
Absolutely.
It's going down.
Oh, absolutely.
So you'll hear, oh, such and such is making, you better get you some. Oh, you better, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do this?
Yeah.
Why wait to the last minute? Learn how to do this stuff. I almost said
you almost got us sent to the principal's office.
Oh,
getting
man.
amped up. And
almost
all,
said, yo, stop playing around. Like, we only say, listen, it's not a scam. Okay. And I know a lot of folks thought it was in the beginning. I know a lot of folks thought Goose, Mel, whatever.
They talking that nonsense.
They
again.
on crack right now. Yeah. Okay. All right. Listen, as I said earlier, it's only going to happen one time.
Yeah.
One time. And it's never, ever going to happen again. Probably, definitely not in your lifetime.
But I want everybody to win. I'm going to keep it a buck.
And understand this. Your kids, if you got children, especially if you got young children, think about it for them. And you know why? Because they're going to have it a lot. This next generation, they're going to have it hard. It's going to be hard for them. It's going to be very hard for them.
It's facts.
Because you got AI taking over jobs.
Yep.
In the next 3 years, 300 million jobs gone due to AI.
Yep.
What are your kids going to do for work?
Well, it's even more than that, because you got to remember 2025, the plan also is in effect where they're going after HUD. So the Section 8 programming is going to be switching up, where they're talking about, long gone are now going to be, you can have it for 20 years. They're saying, hey, look, you can hold a Section 8 for 2 years.
2 years.
And then after the 2 years, basically you're on your own. And then you got to reapply again. They're going after the SNAP program. But here's what's wild. Did you read? I don't know if you've ever gone into much depth of the 2025 plan, right? But one of the things they snuck into this new bill that just came through, right? Yep. What they snuck into the bill was, if you, for any reason, you apply for SNAP, you will not be kicked off if you have a child under the age of 7, right? So that's one thing, right? A kid under the age of 7. The second thing is, if one of the parents and you are married, Goose, did you hear what I just said? You have to be married. If you are married and one of your spouses has to stay home to take care of the kids, it's also another way in which you could stay on SNAP for a longer duration of time than other groups. So what they're doing now as well is they're ensuring, this whole idea of this very alt-right Christian space where marriage and the sanctity of family and all of these things are now being brought into governmental programming as well, which is wild business.
Right.
Because now, if we were to look at the construct of how things have been set up, the reality of how this was originally set up in the late 60s and the 70s was the removal of the man from the home that you were allowed to receive, whether it was that the HUD housing or the food stamps or the the Medicaid, Medicare, healthcare. There had not to be a man in the house. Now they're saying if you want an extension of these supports or services, you have to be married and you have to show proof of said marriage so that you can maintain these services.
Right.
Say what? Say what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Changes are here.
Change
Technology is
coming.
here.
Yeah.
So,
and the
adapt
gap,
to it.
The gap is going to be greater than it ever has been in our history of the haves and the have-nots. And the gap is getting larger and larger each month that passes. More things are being passed. And people are sitting here saying, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you didn't do it when you should have done it. Now we're dealing with a space where you have to ask yourself, is there even place for you or room for you in this country anymore?
If you're existing in this world, which you are, I hope you know that you are, and you're just here and you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, if you're not paying attention to how you're going to live these next few years that's coming up, you're not paying attention.
Crazy business.
Problems.
It's crazy business.
You're going to get left behind on quite a few things.
Crazy
and you're
business.
going to be told, you're going to be looking, you're going to be turning on the TV. Well, what do we do? This is what's going on. What are we supposed to do now? Now, let's talk about the real ID as well. Because, I didn't know that you couldn't. I had heard about this thing years ago, first of all. When I had to renew my license years ago.
Right.
I went up there to get it done. I had some of the stuff for the real ID. They said, nope, you need this too, so we can't do it. So we'll give you the regular one. All right. So I can fly with this? Yeah, you can fly. And I didn't know a few months ago or a month ago, whatever it was, they're saying that you cannot fly unless you have the real ID now.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
if you're going to the registry, there are lines and lines of people there trying to get the real ID. But I'm hearing mixed views on it. I'm hearing that don't get it. Use your passport instead, because they're coming out with the real ID to lock you in on all these things just to track any and everything you do, and then to use that against you if you're doing what you're not supposed to do. Kind of like what they were going to do with the CBDCs.
What's interesting? Hold on, we flying colors. There we go. Oh, we're done. So what's wild about this, right? So looking at the real ID, one of the things that I always find so interesting about this, it almost reminds me of World War II, where certain groups were told that they had to display certain things on their bodies to identify them as a group, right? And so what will happen immediately when you're asked to present your ID and that star, that golden star is in the corner, it's going to signify to whomever it is that you have presented all the paperwork necessary for you to be able to do what you need to do, right? I know for a fact, because it was reported real time to me, that yesterday ICE was on RCC's campus.
Oh, wow.
Let that sink in for a second, right? We have been a sanctuary city. We have been a state that has supported giving licenses and such to individuals that were not documented, right? I don't agree with all this. You know how I've always played devil's advocate, and I've always said, there's certain things I'm not okay with. And one of them is if you don't come in correctly and you don't do things the right way, there are people that have done that and they have every right to be at the table. But there are people that have not done that. And those are individuals that you need to look at and be like, you know what? You need to go back to where you came from and do it the correct way. In the meanwhile, you're also looping up a bunch of people that you shouldn't be looping up. Right? You're getting people caught up in a net that don't belong in the net, and they're getting sent to places that they should not be getting sent to. Right. So there's, unfortunately, it's like the Wild Wild West right now, because there's no checks and balances in place that are allowing to ensure you're protected.
I think it's sad that families are being separated, especially if you've been here for a long time and your child is in school. Your mother and your father both are working, working class citizens. Well, not citizens, or it wouldn't be an issue, but they're working people.
Yeah.
Respectable people.
Law abiding.
Yeah, law abiding. And, they're being arrested and deported.
And that's what I'm talking.
And that's not cool.
Or can we just say?
Now I understand if it's a person that's over here
and he's a murderer.
He's a murderer.
He's a
they're
rapist,
not responsible.
He's a drug
and
cartel
things like
guy.
that. Those
Absolutely.
are the people that need to get the hell up
gang
out of
banging.
here. You know what I'm saying?
Gang bangers, whatever. People that are coming over here.
We get that.
That's the problem. But now you also here's what's heartbreaking, right? And forgive me because I don't remember the young man's name, but there was a young man that got deported and they sent him back to El Salvador. And they've yet to be able to reproduce him. You know why? Because I don't think he's alive anymore. If we're being totally honest. So where they're sending people, especially to El Salvador, in the space in El Salvador, there have been people that talk about go to Google Earth and put in that institution's name, and you will see the ground around the institution has all these massive holes, like mass graves, and the ground is red. So I don't think it's propaganda. I do believe this is really happening.
If that's the case, then he was a very important individual that they wanted back over there or something to that extent.
I don't know the all logistics on it, and that's why that's why I said I'm not going to speak on names and say this and that and the third, because I don't know everything. But that wouldn't surprise me.
If he's dead, it would not surprise
me. And this is the thing. Again, listen, I'm a product. My family is not from this country.
Right.
We came the correct way. Right. We have become law-abiding citizens. We've done everything, the American dream. We've done the whole gamut the way it's supposed to be done. I do have problems with people, and I'll catch the heat for it. I'm okay with that. If you came over on a visitor visa, go home. I don't understand why you think that you're going to come over here and then you set and recheck your status, and then you change all these things so that you can stay. And then you have individuals that never paid into a system. You never paid into Social Security. You never paid into Medicaid. You never paid into all these programmings. But then you have your hand out wanting a Section 8, wanting food stamps, and believing that you're entitled to these things, even though these things are not even available in your country. Make it make sense.
Right. The American dream.
Man, listen, this is why there's parts of what he's doing that needs to happen. Remember, I said you need the agitator to come in so that the rebirth can happen, so you can reset some of this stuff. But in the meanwhile, there are casualties that are happening that they're unfortunate.
You take the good with the bad, you know, and that's with every president, to be honest. You can go back to Biden, and I ain't gonna lie, Biden, I'm not gonna go into details about it, but Biden did some things that screwed me up big time. Listen, man, things were great, and then all of a sudden, here he go, and like
it wasn't great anymore.
Man, we'll talk about it off mic.
All right, but now I'm curious. Now I'm like,
But again, Trump, you can love him or you can hate him, and a lot of people hate him. A lot of people don't not. Some people I just don't like him. I don't care what he do that's good. I don't like him. They just don't like him.
And I still think that's wild business. I don't understand how somebody can have such strong emotions about someone who you've never met, who you have never spoken to. This person has never wronged you, stole from you, beat you, broke into your house, this person, but you have very strong emotions attached to this person. And again, You have to ask yourself, do some deep reflection. Again, I'm going to go back to, and I can only speak for Massachusetts. The average age of homelessness in the state of Massachusetts is 8. Okay? 8. Wrap your brain
we
around
don't
that.
see that though.
Of course not, because these kids are going to be in hotel rooms. These kids are going to be in shelters. These kids are with their moms. Their moms don't have stable housing, right? So we're talking about inequities that are happening real time. It makes no sense to me whatsoever how we live in America and there are children that are still going to bed hungry every single night. Make it make sense to me, Goose, because it doesn't.
And I'm not discounting that or anything. I would just like to see the numbers and how they're doing those numbers, because that's a major problem. If that is, I'm not saying it's not true either, but if it is true, that's a major problem, right? But we don't see that.
Well,
we don't see that.
But why would you see it? It's the same thing about Mass and Cass, right?
Yeah.
The only reason why Mass and Cass gets the attention it does is because you see it.
Right.
All you have to do is drive down into that area and you will see it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You will see how it has been impacting the individuals. You will see physically somebody in a comatose-like state. And you're like, is that person alive or are they dead?
They're
like,
homeless, but like you said, they're in shelters. They're in hotels or motels or wherever.
But you see the Mass and Cass people and you go, oh, that's the homelessness. But that is a very small segment of the homelessness that is impacted and afflicted by addiction. Right. So we're talking about apples and oranges. Yes, they're both fruit. Yes, they may be in the same lane, but they're not in the same category. Right. Because when we look at the 8-year-old and we're talking about the 8-year-old, what we're not talking about is the 8-year-old is attached to probably a parent, whether man or woman. And that parent does not have housing security. So if the housing security is missing, then there is a whole component that we are missing as a society to ensure that there is support in place for these individuals.
Right.
and that's where I stand on that. And I'm gonna die on that cross for sure.
Gotcha.
For sure.
Yeah, I was just responding to a text here. But yeah, I mean, it's a problem. There's a lot of things.
It's heartbreaking.
You know, again, you can love him or you can hate him. Most people hate him. But like I said before, you know, a lot of folks get up every morning, they go to work, they hate their boss, or you hate your coworker.
Talk about it.
You know,
or you tolerate
things. You tolerate things, but you don't go home with that. You go to sleep thinking about your boss? You know what I mean? Does he ruin your night's sleep?
Well,
you know
there have been individuals that do go back to their places of business and it does not end well.
But I'm just saying in general, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
do you take that, the fact that that person stresses you out at work, do you bring that home with you? Then you should just get another, most people would just get another job, or then again, you need the job, you deal with it. But my point is, no
one believed it was possible.
When you go to bed at night, is Trump on your mind? Is he ruining your night's sleep? Do you allow him to ruin your night's sleep?
I do think there are individuals out there that are obsessed with the whole concept of this man. Absolutely.
There are things I hate and don't like, but you know what? It don't ruin my night's sleep.
No, but also too here, if we're going to be transparent in this conversation, Goose, we also need to realize and recognize that we're also standing from a space of privilege, right? Hear what I'm saying, right? And currently right now, the privilege is, and it doesn't mean that privilege is not going to change. It does not mean that shortly this whole thing is going to be turned on its head and now we're up on the chop block next, right? And we, because we of minority group.
Mel, you just got it like that.
No, right? But right now we are in a space of privilege because we are not the they, right? We aren't the they right now. But that's how this whole sort of thing happens. How do you think World War II happened? It was okay because they weren't the they. And then one day they became the they. And when they became the they, it was so far gone.
Okay, you're getting a little deep for me now. I'm kind of getting lost in the shuffle here.
No, don't get lost. Don't get lost in the shuffle. All I'm saying, Goose, right, is that
I'm talking World War II now.
No, yeah. I'm talking about what the Germans did. There's a playbook. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying Trump is doing exactly that, but you could very well make the correlation between the two, that it's going to be, it's the Haitians, It's the Cubans. It's now the Central Americans. It's right. He has all these groups, but in the meanwhile, we're deporting and we're pushing all these groups out. But come on in, white Afrikaners. Come on in. We will be your safe haven. Right? So you ask yourself these questions. Why exactly is that? And we will get into dynamics of, again, the basics of how our country has been set forward.
Right.
People don't want to talk about it because it's uncomfortable. People don't want to talk about it because they're not part of the they. People don't want to talk about it because if we talk about it, then it's real.
Let's talk about it.
And that's when Goose start doing that sort of stuff, that's when I know he's like, Mel, shut up. Mel, nobody wants to hear this, Mel. Mel, people are not interested in what you're saying.
No, I'm just saying.
But I don't believe as a people, we have a certain level of responsibility and civic duty. This is why it's important for you to vote. This is why you need to be involved in the process. This is why you need to understand we are going into a voting season right now in Boston. For our Boston listeners, we are going into a voting season.
We are.
And I keep saying this. Stop complaining about it. Be a part of the solution.
And that's a good transition right there. What are some of the issues with this voting season coming up between Wu and the one and only
Mr. Kraft?
Mr. Kraft, yeah.
Yeah.
What are the issues? What are the main issues?
Well, what do you think they are? And I'll tell you what I think.
Well, let me just say from my standpoint, violence is always a problem in the city.
Absolutely.
Although it seemed, then again, I can't say because I don't watch the news like that. I don't really know what's going on. I don't know who got shot yet or what, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it seems like over the years, that's always been a problem. The weather is getting better. So we all know what summers are like, not just here, but in most cities, especially the rural areas. And I would say violence in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
One, housing's always a big problem.
Absolutely.
And of course, jobs.
Okay, so I'm gonna add a couple of things. So you're spot on about housing, right? So one of the big top issues has been surrounding high housing costs, right?
Yep.
Education, the improvement of Boston public schools for the priority. Right. Why is that important? Literally, the state was about to take over the city of Boston's because of the fact that literally, I believe last count, the number was something like 38% of the graduating class is what graduates, which is wild to me, but okay. Public safety, again, violence, street violence, right? Homelessness, again, makes sense. But you know what else you forgot?
What's that?
Property tax.
Oh, yeah.
Remember when we had Senator Nick Collins in here in the station some months back.
Right.
Property tax is absolutely on the top of the ballot list. And, here's the thing. People are talking about the potentials of rent control, what's happening with the real estate development. We've got all this amazing development happening, but who is it really happening for?
Yeah.
Because these apartments are so expensive. Who really has, like, it's wild. You're literally seeing South End prices in Mattapan now.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the people that live in Boston already, a lot of those folks are being pushed out of Boston.
Yeah.
And you're right. The new construction and all that stuff, the new stuff that's being rehabbed and built, isn't for, at least to my knowledge, is not for the people that live here.
Not for us.
And if you look at the people that are occupying most of these buildings, they're not from here.
Yeah.
They're from other states, other cities.
What do you think about Thomas O'Brien? Do you think, he's an outlier, right? Do we feel or do we think that he's going to be an agitator or upsetter enough that he can take enough of the vote away from Kraft that Wu is able to continue to hold her space? Do you think that, because the early polls are showing Wu in a space, in a place that she's doing well?
Personally, I believe that Wu has it hands down.
You think so?
I just feel that. You know how when you just stand from a distance and you're just watching the show?
Sure.
You're watching the game.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be in the front row to see what's really going on.
Yeah.
I feel like Wu is just so far, and I like Kraft, but I just feel that she's so far ahead, and I don't think Kraft is doing enough. I think you're just seeing his face. You see him around.
I don't know. I don't know if I could stand behind that statement 110
Well,
toes down.
from my seat, that's
Okay.
how I'm viewing it.
Okay, that's fair.
That's how I look at it. I feel like Wu is just in the news all the time, or maybe not all the time, but she's just out there. In my head, that's the vision that I see. And I see, last time I saw Kraft, he did the Mother's Day walk, I believe, last week.
Yeah.
Prior to that, the week before, he was at the Y at an event I was doing.
Okay.
So he's making his rounds.
But he was making his rounds even before he announced.
But in watching him make his rounds, I just don't see him being aggressive enough, getting the message out to the people and convincing those voters to vote for him. I just don't feel or see that.
Well, I do think it's going to be very interesting to see how this all transpires. I do think that we are going to definitely have a very heated debate. And then the reason why, I think what people, some of the response that I've heard from people, and me personally, I don't think it should matter, but it does seem to be in some people's craw, which is that he is wealthy. He's always been a resident of Brookline. He's only recently bought property in the North End within the last 24 months.
Now, let me say this too, not to cut you off. The last mayoral race, can't get my word out. Anissa Asabi George, I thought she was very aggressive in her campaign during the last race, and she still lost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't see Kraft doing half of what I saw her do. And it's still early on. I mean,
I do think it's very early on.
I think maybe during the summer, both parties will crank things up.
Yeah, and I think, here's the thing. I think, like you said, the city is going to definitely be divided. We're definitely going to, have individuals that will feel some kind of way if you say you support someone one way or the other.
Yeah.
I hope that people have the maturity to be able to have political differences and still be able to work collectively at the table, whatever that might look like in the community, right? Because summertime, especially, we have a lot of issues surrounding violence, as you said earlier, and we just want to be safe, right? Ultimately, that's the goal. Ultimately, the goal is that we want to be in a community, we want to be in a space, in a place where we are heard, we are valued, and we have an ability to thrive. That is the most important thing. You want to be safe. You want to know that you're going to be able to go outside of your house and not get harmed. So whoever and whatever situation is presented where that looks like that's something that's going to happen, Boston is politics as usual.
Right.
If we're going to keep it a buck, it is politics as usual.
That's right.
And so, there are people who to this day, live, die by Menino. Right? How
Menino was that dude.
Right. But you understand.
He was that dude.
But you understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
If you came in that time and era, you just thought that once you were mayor, you were just mayor until you died, because Menino never lost the race because Menino had the connection.
Right.
Menino had the relationships.
And the thing about when he was mayor, it seemed like when the election time came around, it was like, really?
Already?
It's election time already?
Yeah.
And who's running? Like, you never knew. I can't remember who ran against him today.
But I think a lot of times, even when you think about it, right? You could go back to Flynn. You could go back to different spaces and places where we've had mayors and places.
Flynn was in for a long time.
You know what I mean? Again, old Boston, right? And so where we stand today is that, again, we've got agitators in the mix that are changing things, and the view and the perspective and the verbiage that's used in the political arena is not what it was 10, 20 years ago. So now you have a working woman mother. Yes, you have a working woman mother who's bringing her baby with her to be deposed.
And I feel like
in DC, like, things are changing.
And I feel like even though Josh is a Kraft, people still don't know who he is.
Isn't that interesting? But Josh has been, listen, if you know anything about the Kraft Foundation's, their philanthropy arm, right? Not their football arm, their philanthropy arm. You know that they are deeply rooted in three things, right? Medical space. So they give a lot and donate a lot of their time and their money into cancer research and building and spaces like that, right? The next piece is that people don't realize that he meaning Kraft, sat at the head of the Berkshire umbrella for the Boys and Girls Club, which impacted Roxbury, Talbot Ave, South Boston. These are all key component spaces which Josh Kraft ran. So,
I'm sorry.
how'd that happen?
didn't know it was gonna.
Oh, we're
All
just
right,
we're,
there
look,
we go.
when I give back,
That
I
was
give
my
back,
fault.
right? I just give back. I just keep giving back, y'all.
That was my fault.
So here we are in a space. I do believe he knows the neighborhoods.
Mhm.
I do believe he knows the people in the community because he has strategically been in a place where that sort of thing was actually happening. Why? He was at the Berkshire running the umbrella for Roxbury, Dorchester, Talbot Ave, South Boston. That means you have to have a pulse on the neighborhood to know what these boys and clubs are going to be needing for programming. How do you ensure that these kids are kept safe? How do we ensure that money keeps coming in?
And that's
How do
all
we
good.
ensure that?
And that's all good.
So
But when it comes
has
to
some
voting,
communication.
when it comes to voting, you know who votes and you know who's not going to vote.
That
The young folks ain't voting.
Well,
They're not voting. You know, my mother votes every year.
does she vote every single election? Whether
She
it's
votes every
selectmen?
election.
Good
The
on her.
elderly are always voting. So when it comes to
Because they were part of the movement
getting out
of
there in the
getting
streets
vote.
and campaigning, you gotta get their vote first, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You got to get their vote, and then you work your way down from there. The kids, they're not going to the polls. Forget about it.
Do you think they're
It's
not
not gonna
going?
happen.
Do you think they're not going because they don't feel they're?
I take my mother to the polls all the time, and I never see kids in line.
You know,
Never see, or young adults in line, I should say.
you know, I do believe, like, so for your mom's generation, for example, right?
Yep.
She was part of the movement. Because if we're talking reality here, we are talking less than 60 plus years ago, right? That as a person of color, you did not have the right to vote in this country. How quickly that messaging got lost. It only took 2-3 generations for that messaging to get lost, right? And the value and the power of the vote. And here's the thing that really makes a lot of sense that people get lost in, which is if I am going to partake in this process, you start at grassroots level, meaning who are your people at large? Who is your selectman? Who is the person that is going to be my person of contact as my ombudsman? Who am I sending out to Congress? Who am I sending out to the Senate to represent me, my neighborhood, and who I am? Who is sitting at City Hall fighting my battles, right? These votes, these Congress, like, you know how many people go and literally there's nobody else on the ticket but the one person?
Right.
They're not opposed by anybody, right? So this is part of the problem. Is that we as a people, as a community, have to show up in spaces and places greater than the sound bite for the sun, the 6 o'clock news, because we're worried about somebody who got shot. How about we are part of the process of selecting the ombudsman and the people that are putting in the road speed bumps in our roads, fixing the potholes? Who's in charge of making sure that the police have the correct support in the community that aren't officers? These are just real. You get where I'm going?
Yeah.
The community outreach person, like, know who your community outreach person is. Shout out to B3, Mr. Green. Know who your person is.
You should be out there campaigning with somebody. For real.
This is important. And if
it is.
if we're not having these conversations, guess what's going to be? Business as usual. Business as usual. And nobody wants to have that conversation. The mentality is this.
So you got to figure out a way to reach people that's different from, the normal way.
The normal rhetoric.
For the most part, it hasn't worked, and it's still not working today in 2025.
Of course not.
At the end of the day, people don't even know that if you don't vote, what happens to your neighborhood. You don't get first dibs on certain things.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the governor's race or the mayor's race. This park may not get
the
redid
attention
until
Yep.
They're last on the list.
Yep.
Because they know who votes and who don't vote.
Oh, absolutely.
They know that this Dorchester, Four Corners area, they don't vote.
You're spot on with that.
We can take care of that park, but we'll put them here because over here, I got all the votes.
My
so we're gonna take care of them first.
Are complaining. My constituents are complaining. Like, there was a bill passed. You remember during COVID, it was like literally every single night fireworks were going off. Do you recall this?
I remember that.
And people aren't thinking about, as my son is actively deployed, right? So I'm super sensitive to certain spaces. There are vets that have come back that have served for our country, that they have PTSD. So the sounds of fireworks to them is not fireworks and enjoyment. It literally to them sounds like they've been transported back to wherever they came from in the Middle East or wherever they were, if it was Vietnam or whatever. And it is very traumatic. It's traumatic for elderly people. It's traumatic for dogs, right? So there was a law passed that they were going after. I think it was what are they?
Shout out to Simba.
Phantom Fireworks out of New Hampshire was placing all the strategic ads, all like in Grove Hall and all these places to come to New Hampshire.
I gotta say something real quick. I'm sorry,
Go
not
ahead.
to cut you off. Right? You know, again, shout out to Simba. Right now, growing up, most people, especially if you're not an animal lover, you know, I've always had this position. Not to switch it up a little bit. I've always had the position.
Of course, you don't.
Why
want to
do
switch it
people?
up.
Why do people? You know, the dog died. Right? And people get very, very emotional about it. Never understood that. But my kids put their dog to sleep. And when my son told me, I felt a certain way. I felt a certain way because, you know, the dog was in. I'm like, really? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, you know,
to some people, the dog, listen, animals, for some people, first of all, fur babies sometimes take the place of a child. Right. There's some people that either by choice or because of just how their body is set up, they do not have children. Right. So their fur babies
dogs
are everything.
Are like human.
Correct. They give them the support. Then you have people that have dogs that are supporting them because they are in special needs situations, whether it's a dog that can smell with a kid who's got diabetes, that his blood sugar's dropping and the mom can get to the kid so that they don't go into diabetic shock, right? They're trained to do these amazing things, right? Then you have dogs that are for protection.
Dogs play with you.
This is what I'm saying.
Dogs protect you.
Dogs. Someone saying I'm a cat family.
Let me tell you.
Cats too.
Before I sold the crib years ago, the dog was downstairs barking. This was like 3 a.m. I'm just thinking somebody's walking by the house. Boom, 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 boom. The dog's barking. Ruff, 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 ruff. All right. And he won't shut up. I go downstairs. I look around. I don't see nothing.
Okay.
I go back upstairs. He's still barking. He's going crazy. I look out the window. I don't see nothing. I look to the left where the tree is. It's like 3 raccoons in the tree.
Oh, he's like, Daddy, there's somebody outside.
And
There's somebody outside, Daddy.
The dog is going crazy. I'm like, yo, what is going on? You know, but they sense everything.
Of course.
And they are, and I'm talking from the smallest dog to the biggest
absolutely.
dog.
Listen, Chihuahuas got them big attitudes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. As a real estate agent, when I go in houses sometime, the little dogs are the worst ones.
Because they think they're
Those
big.
are the worst ones. They will bite the mess out of you.
Because they think they're big. But you know, wait, I'm going to segue. And I know this is totally off topic, but I got to say it. Poor Snoopy. Every time we have this shout out to Snoopy. And for those that don't know what I'm talking about, I named the dog that is in the Karen Reed trial that belonged to the family at 34. What was the lane? Wasn't it
34 View? What is it?
Was there for something View, Prestwick View or something like that was the name of the house. I apologize for not knowing the exact name of the street.
Right. We
but
talk about it so much.
they quote unquote rehomed the dog. No, Snoopy got taken out because they needed Snoopy to give his dental marks, and they're like, yeah, we can't have that happen, so we got to cremate Snoopy. So shout out to Snoopy for doing his job. That was protect his owner, protect his house, protect his family, because that is, I feel like people do not give enough respect.
And the dog did bite a couple of people. In the family.
But the dog,
cousins.
The dog did its job. Like, so, all I'm saying is, people don't give enough respect to spaces and places. And animals are one of those things, that I feel like people kind of just downplay it when somebody says, that.
And I did for years until I had a dog.
Until you're impacted.
Until the kids had a dog.
Until you're impacted, and cats have the same, effect on people. Some people prefer a cat over a dog, however that works. But they provide a service. This is companionship. And a lot of people, especially during the pandemic, turned around and got animals because they were lonely. They lived alone. Like if your calendar is filled with activities and friends and
dogs
going
look
and
at you a certain way.
Because listen, nobody's gonna meet you at the front door and be like, "I missed you. I love you. Can you feed me? Let's do some snuggling. I don't care what you did last week. I know that you probably threw a shoe at me.
And with you saying that, I'm just reminiscing, walking in the house and like yo, get off me, man. Like, yo, damn, yo, you're the kid's dog. I mean, we cool, but damn.
But he probably looked at you like, I love you, master. You're the best. You're the best is best. I love you. But this is the thing. You will never find that. I don't care how loyal you are as a human to somebody.
Right.
I'm not patiently waiting at a front door with the slippers in my mouth and the pipe and like, what are we doing here? It's not happening. So,
but perfect segue. Let's talk about Karen Reed case.
Karen Reed case.
And,
all right.
Let's get right into it.
As you sit here now, are you aware of whether or not there's evidence that John O'Keefe, the phone describes John O'Keefe's phone taking 36 steps, covering a distance of about 84 feet at 12:32 and 16 seconds on the morning of January 29th, 2022? Objection.
Can you answer that? Are you aware of that?
I'm not, Your Honor.
Okay, the answer is
The answer was?
No, I'm not aware of that.
all right.
Now, the reason why that is important, because the amount of steps places him inside the house.
Mm.
That was
Dun,
a huge
dun, dun.
that was a huge part of the cross-examining, and that's Officer Uri. So Proctor was fired. This guy was promoted. And many saying that he had a lot to do with misrepresentation of the evidence and all of that stuff.
Mm.
And if again, just watching the trial, it seems like every witness that takes the stand gets caught in a lie.
Oh, it's wild.
Yeah.
It's, I'm a little disappointed. I'm just going to say this, and it's not trying to get off subject. I'm disappointed, but I understand why they have not allowed cameras into Diddy's trial.
Okay.
Because some of the sketches have taken me out. I ain't gonna lie. Some of the sketch artist has been like chef's kiss because some of the sketches have taken me out. But here we have.
I think it's because it's the whole thing is just so explicit. But we're gonna get to Diddy.
But what I'm saying here is that I feel like that judge should have recused herself since the last trial. And every single thing, like the fact that the evidence from the state showing how they themselves took their own data that they were able to archive and find and not use it because it didn't build the case. But then hoping and praying that somehow this other defense team wasn't going to find the same stuff, bringing in their own people, is wild to me. It's wild business. It's
now what's crazy
business.
is that Brenner, who's the prosecuting attorney,
yes,
he's a defense attorney.
Yep.
And most people wondered, why did they hire him? That does not make sense. But it makes a lot of sense.
Because he
knows. If you look at the trial, right?
Yeah.
He's really doing two jobs. One, he's trying to prosecute Karen Reed.
Right.
But he's also prepped and ready for the defense accusation that she didn't do it and blaming it on the police, who obviously are covering it up. So he's doing two jobs. He's prosecuting and he's defending. All in one job.
Come on, Goose.
And to be honest with you, I think it's genius.
Listen, I mean, between the Stop and Shop bags,
it's not working, but it's genius.
Between the Stop and Shop bags and the red Solo cups that were being used, between the fact that you had the snow plow guy come in, who does this for a living for years, and he has told you unequivocally that there was nothing there.
Speaking of the snow plow guy,
let me just ask this. Do you remember him saying that he had first plowed the area free of the Ford Edge? In other words, first passed in front of 34 Fairview around 2:30 in the morning? Does that sound right?
I believe his dispatch time for the plowing of the roads that evening was 2:30. But I would have to look at my report.
That's fine. And then it was sometime subsequent there too that he saw the Ford Edge in place, maybe an hour later?
Sounds about right, again.
Okay. Did you take any investigative steps when you learned about this snowplow driver to determine who, if anyone, might have owned a Ford Edge associated with 34 Fairview?
I did not know.
Did your investigation ever reveal that the Albert family actually had a Ford Edge at the time?
Yes.
Wow. So the snowplow guy, a huge part of all this that you know, if it weren't for the defense, we wouldn't even hear about.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But did you catch how they zoomed into her face?
Yeah.
And you know, body language is a very important tool that is used to let people know things, right? It's a communication tool that is used, whether it's your hands, it's your face, your expression, it's your tone, right? So there's all these things about that. But I don't even know if she were to just stoically sit there with no emotion, they would have a problem with it. If she grimace, they'd have a problem with it.
Yeah.
If she would smile, they're going to have a problem with it. So I don't think there's anything she could possibly humanly do to appease what is happening, because it's going to just constantly be this back and forth thing.
Here's the thing with Karen Reed. You know, surprisingly enough, people don't like, in general, a lot of folks don't like her. And like you just said, they don't like her demeanor. Personally, if I'm on trial for something I didn't do
for my life,
personally, I can sit back and say, I don't give a damn. She didn't do it. I didn't know she didn't do it. And I don't care how she looks. But if you got to play the game, you got to play the game.
I'm more heartbroken by the level of corruption. And it breaks my heart because we entrust individuals.
And everybody knows it.
But that's the thing, right? We entrust individuals to partake in making sure the community is safe, right? And I'm going to stand on this hill too, which is I was gobstopped when the blatant amount of drinking that was happening, and these bar owners, knowing that these officers were all tore up from the floor up, allowing them and their wives and girlfriends who are also inebriated to then get into cars.
And one of them actually killed someone years ago.
Right.
Got away.
6 months. Wasn't it 6 months on that one?
Yep.
So,
and Judge Bev was the judge, and her brother was actually the attorney.
So again,
which
right.
is crazy. Should have never happened.
It breaks my heart because, you know, I understand, again, I've said this before, and I will die on this hill. You know, my hat goes off to people that are police officers, that are firefighters, that are ambulance workers, right? Because they are running to the tragedy and an emergency while everyone else is running away and running out. Well, nowadays, everyone's just pulling their phones out. But in theory, right, they're running to the problem. They're running to the crime. They're running to the fire. They're running to the shooting. They're running to it. There has to be PTSD attached to the things that they witness, they see. There's no way, right? So they need to have a place or a way to blow off steam. I receive that. I understand that. I just don't understand how there's such a blatant disregard for the laxity surrounding drinking, knowing that you have to go to work in the morning, knowing.
Yeah, but who's going to check them?
I don't know.
No one.
I don't know. But maybe if people voted.
Who can't check them?
Well, but maybe if people voted. But maybe if people voted where people stood on spaces where they made things, you know, so that
I'm sure the people of Canton voted, though.
Definitely. They're showing up.
They voted in Canton.
They're definitely showing up in Canton. I wouldn't say no. I'm just simply saying, to me, it becomes problematic where there is a much greater problem, systemic problem at large, right? Because then you take that same prosecutor, that same judge, that same lead investigator, right? And we shift gears and we go to that cadet program and that young lady who in fact did not commit suicide, but in actuality was snuffed out, right? Again, the corruption and the level of it is mind-blowing. And and again, I'm not putting everybody in the same basket.
People in power.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not sitting here saying everybody's bad and everybody. No. But I'm talking about the corruption itself is what we have to, again, have agitators willing to change things up, because the culture is so damaging and parts of it are just seeping out. And again, social media is the catalyst that it's changing this, because what is happening real time is that before it used to be, if you got the news, how'd you get it? Channel 4, Channel 7, 25, 56, whatever it was, right? That's how you got your news.
And to be honest with you, I think television news is the worst place to get news.
Really?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because it's all biased. They never give you, like, you know, and I think Karen Reed trial is the great example.
Okay.
When you go home later on this evening,
yes,
watch either 7, 5, or 4. Watch how they report on the trial, and then ask yourself, if you didn't know everything that was going on, how would you feel about their report?
Okay, I can see
because
that.
because 9 times out of 10, if you knew absolutely nothing about the trial, if you didn't follow it and you just follow what they report on television, you would think Karen Reed killed him.
That's real.
You would absolutely think that she did it, because they don't give you both sides.
But that's until you see the documentary on HBO.
Yeah, and then you know.
Then you're like, wait a second, what really?
Yeah,
what
right,
really happened?
Right, because a lot of the stuff that's happening, all the lies that are being told on Stan, the fact that his shoe had 5 different DNAs on it, you know, and the fact that that the shoe that they got from the hospital was
the right
foot,
right, but they were
and
supposed
the
to be the
food
left.
that was in a separate bag that they found on the lawn was also the right foot.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, you wouldn't know those things. They don't highlight those things when they tell the news. So
Yeah,
you really only know what they tell you, and they usually give you one side of the story, which is the lead.
I think that's
and
fair.
that's it.
I think
And
that's a
that's it.
fair assessment.
So and they do that with everything.
Yeah.
So you never get the full story. I think social media is the best when it comes to news. Now, you got to fact check a lot of things.
Sure.
You know, you can't just go off the bat and say this and that is true.
Sure.
But it's also one of the reasons why they want to get rid of TikTok.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
don't get me on my
TikTok
TikTok
is full of so much information.
Oh, absolutely.
On just about everything.
Absolutely. You
know?
There is not one subject matter that exists in the world that you cannot find on TikTok and somebody who is an expert at said whatever it is.
Right.
Whether it's gardening, whether it's finance, whether it's marriage help, whether it's dealing with the narcissist, whether it's parenting, whether it's an autism space, it does not matter. There literally is a space for everyone. And the problem was that they weren't able to control what was happening real time, whether it was the knowledge transfer that was happening, whether it was the communication. You know what I always think about? You recall when the orange haze was in New York and you could not even see people like standing in front of you. The haze was so bad. Do you recall that? Like,
I don't remember that.
It was like maybe 1 or 2 summers ago, right? And they said that it was coming from the fires of Canada. And the haze had come.
Oh, no, I do remember that.
Right.
That was last year, right?
Or
the year before?
The year before, right? And the haze was coming over. And so New York was like in this orange.
Which was
plume,
BS. I thought that was BS.
Right. But people that lived in the part of Canada that they were saying and reporting
Didn't
it was
see
coming,
anything.
would literally stand outside their door with their device, point their device at the sky and show you a crystal clear blue sky with 1 or 2 puffy clouds in it that were white. There was no smog. There was no fire. There was no orange.
And some people, they just believe everything, and they don't think that even people in power, people that they admire, they don't think those folks can tell a lie or commit a crime or would sway you in any type of way.
Not my president.
You know, but... You know, I just say that again.
I play chicken,
right?
Cheeky.
You know, the news. You got to kind of. I like to always ask myself questions. You tell me something, Mel, or I hear something from a friend. They're telling me a story. Okay, I'm gonna hear them. Right.
Right.
I'm gonna take it all in.
Right.
But I'm gonna have questions.
Sure.
And I'm gonna ask those questions because it got to make sense to me first.
Of course.
Or else I just can't allow someone to just tell me anything.
The sky's falling
and the sky's falling and I don't look into it or I don't give thought to it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And this is with everybody, people I even trust. I got questions.
But
why'd you do this?
But I do.
So why did that happen?
But I think that makes sense.
And so on and so on.
If you blindly walk into any space and you trust someone blindly, that can be very dangerous for you. period. Whatever the topic is,
Right.
right? So I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. If someone's telling me something, if I believe them blindly, it's more so because I love them, and I cannot imagine.
You can believe someone and still have questions.
I do think so, but you may not even ask those questions because you don't want the answer.
Depend,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, depending on who it is, I get that.
You get what I'm saying? If I love you blindly and I, I don't want to know. And also too, I also may not want to know because I don't want to be held accountable for knowing.
Like, and just as an example, I'll bring up R. Kelly. I'll use R. Kelly as an example. My question has always been, why did those people keep going back? Okay, you said he did it, but why did you keep going back? So if you tell me something, I'll believe
But
you.
it's the same thing with Cassie.
But I'm always going to have.
But it's the same question with Cassie,
exactly,
right?
Same thing with the Cassie and Diddy case.
Cassie and Diddy, 10 years. Why did she keep going back? Which again goes back to what
she did. I know why she went back. She went back for the money.
But
she was being paid.
But I think it's more than that. When let me just say this much, Goose. Goose, listen. Let me just say this.
Before you say that, let me just, because I don't want to lose thought of what I'm going to say here. You cannot tell me. Now, she got 30 million just recently. Before that, I want to say she got at least 20. He paid.
I heard it was 20, but her lawyers got 33.3% of it.
And before that, he was buying her all kinds of gifts and giving her all kinds of money. So yeah, I know there's this thing with domestic violence where people keep going back. I don't know what they call that.
It's called boomeranging.
Okay. I know that, and I do believe that being part of the truth. But I think in her case, it was on a whole nother level why she went there in the first place. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but
so
when you want to come to a conclusion, you cannot miss those facts.
Okay, so Goose, I'm gonna have to stop you there.
Okay, stop me. Shut up, Goose.
Yeah, Goose. I love you, Goose. Okay, just know.
Listen, and I'm not saying she's right or wrong or anything, but I always want to hear the whole truth.
And I understand that, right? They always will say there's your side, that person's side, and then there's the truth, right? And it's all about perception. It's all about that. But also, there's been massive studies and all these, think tanks that have been surrounding in spaces of DV, domestic violence, right? So when we talk about somebody who is in a power structure, which exactly is R. Kelly and Diddy, these are power structured environments, right? And so was it that she was attracted to the power? She was attracted to the money. She was attracted to whatever that was in the beginning. Okay. What woman or man is not? I don't care. I've never met.
And I don't fault her for that.
Right? I've never met an individual that sees someone that is in a place or position of power and they're not, mesmerized or whatever. Oh, I'm going to go meet the president. Oh my God, their favorite artist. It doesn't matter, right? Now you add the component to that space where there's a relationship. Now the dynamic shifts. And so a lot of times when abusers abuse, what they will do is they do the abuse and then they are very apologetic and they'll shower you with gifts and tell you they won't do it again until the next time. And this is what the cycle is called, boomeranging. So what happens is a lot of times is that it's more so seen with women to men, usually, not that it doesn't exist in other spaces. I'm not sitting here saying domestic violence does not happen where the woman is the aggressor and the man is not. I understand that. But I'm speaking from this space, right? So now you have something happening where you have somebody who is being groomed as well. Because there might be things that she has done.
Well, he definitely groomed her.
Right. That has been done or hasn't been done, whatever that is. And there's shame attached to it. And you don't want that to get out. You're dealing with a very powerful person that has the ability to cause harm. You're dealing with a lot of different pieces of this. So do I think that while in the midst of all this happening, that she herself probably didn't even know how to break herself free of it? Absolutely. Do I think that once it was done, that she was able to finally break free, that she somehow made the decision that I need to be compensated for whatever it is?
I will say this.
I wouldn't say no.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. I will say this because, first of all, when she first approached with the lawsuit, I was kind of shocked because her knowing who Diddy is and what or was during that time, I didn't think she had any protection, right? But
Look at Kim Porter.
Right. She didn't have any protect. I didn't think she had any protection, but
Sure.
she does. Albie Shore actually came out and finally said that he thought he was on was it Good Morning America? One of those shows with I think Al Roker or
Okay.
I forget the guy's name, the
Yeah.
black guy. But Albie Shore actually came out and said that and it wasn't Roker. I can't remember his name, but he asked him a question, and I'm going to paraphrase. You think that he drugged you and caused your organs to
shut
down, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, yeah. He said yes. And that was the first time he came out and said that.
But this is my point.
Yeah.
This is diabolical behavior. This is diabolical thinking. This is somebody who Clive Davis created. Think about what we're saying here, right? Who was his mentor? Who was his main leg? It was Clive Davis, right? I always think about that one moment that got captured on camera where Whitney Houston whispers into what is it? Brandy's ear with a note, "Get out." And then she's found dead not too long later.
Right.
But you
said
get
earlier,
what I'm saying? You think that you understand the dynamics of what is happening around us, but we only are given a glimpse into what is happening in the Great Oz. It's wild behavior.
Yeah, so I think Cassie, just getting back to Cassie, I believe that because she came in because she had the support.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, she would have never tried to sue or even approached Diddy on what happened in the past. And the fact that what's the company, Diageo, and this is where this really all started, because Diddy actually sued them and won. They end up settling. They gave him nearly $1 billion in settlement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
that was dealing with wasn't it like where they were putting his advertisement,
Ciroc and the tequila that he owns, he doesn't own any of them. He was partners, but with the sales, they ended up giving him nearly $1 billion. So, again, who owns Diageo? If you look it up, they're owned by, they own BlackRock is one of the owners. So they're a large conglomerate, pretty much.
Sure.
And this, the whole Diddy thing is supposed to be a get back.
Sure.
And Cassie, I'm telling you now, if she did not have the backing of whoever's backing her, I guarantee you someone backed her on all of this, because her number one concern would have been her health.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Her safety.
Yeah, her safety, pretty much.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah, the whole Diddy thing is crazy. And it's also crazy to me that the kids are in court. Mainly the girls. And I don't know how old the girls are now, but with all the stuff that's coming out in court, man, I would not want my daughters there, man.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, they're at least like 17, 18 by now.
I would not want my daughters to hear all that stuff, man. Some of the stuff, and that's one of the reasons why it's probably not on TV. Because it's one of those type of trials. Everything is coming out. Everything. I mean, in detail.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
It's an ugly trial.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking because
it's pretty ugly.
When you start thinking about, and again, I'm going to go back to how this individual was so diabolical and so, callous and so methodical in the behavior and the actions and the retribution and how the individual moved and all the things that were happening simultaneously while presenting themselves as the one. And,
and let's be honest, there are people listening now that, listen, what you do in your home on your time, that's personal. That's in your bedroom. That's you, and I can't sit here and try and not, he did that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's not about the shame piece, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I do believe that people have the right to live their life so how they choose to live forth, hence why America is it's the place that it is. America's changing, yeah. But in theory, you have the right of your freedom of will, speech, religion, things of that nature, as long as you stay within the confines of what we as a community have set as rules and regulations, right? The behavior in which he chose to operate under is out of bounds. He's an outlier. There is nothing about anything that he was doing that's normal. To send your, to send your assistant 52 blocks.
Well, he had a team.
But I'm just saying, this is one example. You sent your assistants 52 blocks to go get a particular steak from a particular place. And then because the assistant was unable to return back in a particular amount of time that you thought was suitable, you abused that assistant. Right? There's all these instances, and it's not just him, it's the culture.
And this is where too, I go back to karma, right? And I think a lot of that is what's going on too, because a lot of folks don't believe in that. Folks use the term as a cliche, like yeah. But no, that stuff is real. Your existence is real. You're existing, you see, you're breathing, and that's a whole nother show. But you get what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
And I think you do bad things eventually come back to you.
Oh, absolutely.
It may not come back right away.
Or come back to your kids.
Yeah,
it's coming back. It's coming back.
Yeah,
you best believe it's coming back.
That's just a fact. It's not something that I'm saying these are it's out there.
Oh, absolutely. Energy is a real thing, Goose.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing. Listen, I know we're going a little sideways here, but again, It goes back into this concept of what you put out into the universe, right?
Yeah.
19 Keys spoke on this. Jaylen Brown spoke on this, that we're talking about the frequencies and energy and
it's
what you're doing.
Real.
If you're energy and I'm energy and we live in energy, and energy is a continuous time movement of space. The reality is what you do is going to come back, whether it's positive or negative. Whether it's positive or negative, it will. So if you're constantly spewing into the world venom, you are going to be a darker energy. And there are things about absolutely
like
there's things about
wind.
Being a darker energy that causes someone to operate differently. And here's the thing, what's wild about us as humans is that we all have this kind of radar in us. You can be near someone and say, yo, I don't know. Or come into a room and be like, yo, we need to be out. Something's off. I'm not feeling this.
Oh, no doubt.
Something's going on. I need to be out.
Oh, no doubt.
I need to get off this real quick.
I'm huge with energy.
So,
I feel energy. I'm telling you.
People may say, oh, that's that woo woo kind of thing, but it's not.
A person doesn't even have to tell me. I already know.
Yeah.
Someone can say, yo, Goose, watch yourself, man. Okay, who that? I already know.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So all I'm saying is I'm not surprised. I'm glad in some ways, because I do believe people that are abusers and predators, because that's what he is.
And
he is a predator.
Let's just talk about all the things. And all these things are alleged, right?
Oh, yeah, sorry, allegedly.
From the Notorious B.I.G. to Tupac, Andre Harrell, Heavy D, Kim Porter, Kid Cudi.
Yeah.
And the list of names of other folks that we know absolutely nothing about. He's done a lot. If all these things are true, which I believe a lot of them are, just based on how I look at things and as long as I follow Diddy,
right.
You know what I'm saying? He's done a lot. He's built a track record of doing bad things, allegedly.
Sure.
And sometimes things catch up to you.
But how can it not?
Right.
I mean, if we're working on the universal law where we talk about what you put out comes back in, there's no way that you can sit here and tell me that you continue to do all that.
Expect
Gotta pay a bill. Hang on.
Unorthodox radio from Boston and beyond. Heat 981fm.com.
Flying too.
I know.
And we do got to roll out a little early today.
That's fine.
But yeah, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so I think we're at a point in our society again where we are in a place where you've got the Me Too movement happening, you've got the accountability movement happening, you've got the call out of predators happening, and you've got people that are no longer being silenced the way we've been silenced, right? And a lot of times too, as somebody who has been victimized by people, what happens a lot of times is that your abusers will gaslight you to believe that what it is that you're talking about either didn't happen. But I've come to realize to them it was just a normal Tuesday. That's why they don't remember it. And furthermore, if you're going to even go into a greater space, it's amplified 20 million times more with him because he had a space of stature within society where he was an idol. He was an icon. And so they fall even further and harder and faster than anybody else will.
Yeah. So I met Diddy years ago, back in the day, working at the station. He came through. He was on a promo tour.
Okay.
And he came through. In the promo tours, usually artists do that when they're trying to get a radio station to play their record, right? So he came out, I think, what album was that? I forget the name of that song, but he came out with that album, and he wanted us to play it at WIOD back in the day. And during that time, we weren't playing hip hop at all.
Okay.
I believe we did play it that one time, but we did not add the record. He wanted us to add the record. And then on Mondays and Tuesdays, those are the ad days. Still to this day in radio, those are the ad days when radio stations add new music to their playlist that they agree to play for a certain amount of time.
Did you just say play?
Yeah, that too.
Was that an entendre, sir?
That too.
Okay. Okay.
So we did not add his record, and he had a lot to say about it, and he talked about this particular person. He said, man, I went up to Boston, took pictures with his kids and everything. And
snap.
And he didn't even add my record, man.
Oh, snap.
And he said it in a magazine. And he was talking about the folks in Boston, man. So that was probably my closest.
Your closest shout out and closest brush with death, because you could have been offed because you didn't have the record.
Yo, I'm going to get that dude Goose up in Boston, man. But yeah, so but I mean, I would have never known back then.
Oh, Shotgun Sandy said Craig Mack too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Shout out to Shotgun Sandy. Yeah, Craig Mack too.
That's right, Craig Mack. He was another one. There's a lot of folks,
and he was and Craig was a prolific lyricist. That brother was talented.
And he talked about, before he died, he talked about going and killing a particular person. He didn't say the name. But you can imagine who he was talking about.
Right.
He was talking about going to get a particular person, man, right before he died.
I don't know.
But yeah, the whole Diddy thing is crazy. Crazy.
I mean, listen, I'm just, that's one of the moments I say, I just a little baby. I sitting at the kiddie table. Don't pay attention to me, please. I want no part of it. Thank you. Like, what? Could you imagine what had been going down in the Hamptons and them white parties? Like, just, oh my gosh. I don't know. Predators
He
are
was a person in power. He had all the money in the world
to burn through.
All the money in the world.
Yeah.
And, some people think $1 million is still a lot of money. No, this dude had millions. He had over $1 billion. It still does.
Yeah.
Again, the lawsuit, they said themselves, they gave him nearly $1 billion.
So let me ask you a question. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on this. Do you think that because he possibly knows too much, that he may not make it?
Oh, most definitely.
Do you think that that's like, do you think like it's an Epstein? Do you think he's going to have an Epstein thing happen to him?
I think that's real. I don't know. I can't say that
they
could happen.
They didn't even let Epstein even get to this point.
But look at what almost happened to Tory Lanez.
Yeah.
He was nearly killed.
Yeah.
Both lungs stabbed.
Yeah. That's real.
He's having problems breathing now.
Of course. I mean, I just find it, again, we've talked about this before, for whatever it's worth, right? But there used to be a code. There was a code, right? And codes had certain things to it. Women were off limits.
Yeah.
Children were off limits. Like there was a code, and that code is gone. That code is very much so gone. It doesn't exist anymore.
We're in a different world today.
Oh, absolutely.
Totally
it's gone.
different world.
It's gone. Absolutely. Yeah. So I don't know, but it's about that time, Goose.
All right. Well, folks, that's going to do it for Thursday. So next week, guess what we're doing on Thursday next week?
Are you going to have your men day?
Yeah, we're going to do
it.
Are
you kicking me out? Are you kicking me out the penthouse?
I'm still looking for a couple of sharp women that we would like to have in the studio or on live somehow. We're going to do it again. Relationships
wait, I'm
from a man's perspective.
I'm not getting kicked out the mansion.
We'll see.
The penthouse.
We'll see. We may. I'm not sure if we want anyone from the Urban Heat. You know, not to knock anybody from the urban heat, but we want 2 females either in a relationship. You know, you can be single. You can even be married if you want to participate. We want to get some of your commentary on relationships this time around. So we're going to try and do it a little different this time.
That's interesting.
All right.
All right.
That's it. We'll do it again, y'all. R&B Vibes is up.
I don't care about where you've been. It's out of my life. Had to jump back and kiss myself. I don't need you to feel myself. There's just one